What's up everyone, my name is Rosendo, welcome back to my channel. We are back with another video, and today we are back with another track breakdown. I feel like it's been a while. I don't know why, I feel like it's been a really long time since I had a track breakdown. Obviously my last one was One Way or Another. The time before that was Slow, and then it was Understanding the time before that. But I mean, we're looking at a new track today. We're looking at Night, which just came out, the longest track to date. And I've been in somewhat of I'm rambling again, but I've been in somewhat of a creative slump. Not because I've been in a creative slump, but because Understanding, I mentioned I wasn't satisfied with. Slow and One Way or Another Rosendo remix weren't quite really my sound. I like those tracks, but those were more just for fun. And now we're finally at Night, which is kind of another track that, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love. And actually, this is a good track. I like this track. This track is kind of my sound, and it's definitely a sound I'm going to be moving toward. But I'm going to talk a little bit about why this track also feels a little bit different as we get to the breakdown. So without further ado, let's, I guess we can hop right into it. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the track if you haven't already, out on all platforms. And let's hop into FL Studio. All right, we are back in FL Studio taking a look at Night, my latest release, melodic house track slash progressive house track. The only reason I call it progressive is because it's the longest track I've released up to this point. It is about 7 minutes long, and it definitely has, progression to it, quite a bit of a long progression to it. So I think it kind of is progressive house, kind of melodic house. It feels a little bit more melodic housey. But here we are, we're here at Night. Either way, there's no fixed genre. My latest release, there's a few things I want to say about this track before we get started. Again, I feel like it's been a while since I did a track breakdown, so I just gotta kind of get the gears turning. But let's talk about, well, actually, there's a few things I want to mention first. Two things about this track, and then we'll talk about why I made it. But honestly, I don't even think I could tell you why I made it, because I made this track so long ago. But let's start with the first one. Number one, at this point, Night is the oldest track I've made. And it's actually kind of exciting because, I mean, this track was made, let's take a look at the notes. I just looked at this. This says I made this track in 2020. Now, I don't remember if I started this track, this project file in 2020, and then it turned into Night. But the exciting thing about this track is that this is at this point, this is my latest release. This is the earliest track I've made. This was made, I'm pretty sure, way before Fake ID, Low, Exposition, but before all these tracks. So I've mentioned in the past that I've sit on a lot of kind of not unreleased tracks, but unreleased tracks, just because a lot of them are ideas. Some of them are a little bit more personal. Some of them are just kind of things that, I want to release one day, but not right now. And Night was actually one of those. I don't remember how I started this track, but Night is the oldest track I made. As you saw, I believe I started this in 2020. Fake ID, Low, and Exposition were 2023. So that just goes to show how old this track is. And I mean, I don't even know what was going on with other track ideas. I mean, I know what other track ideas I've had at that time, but I don't know why I sat on this for so long. I don't know. It just never felt like the right time. This is just one of those tracks that, I just had, and I never thought about when I wanted to release. But yes, this track was definitely started way before those. It says it started in 2020. Maybe it was later because maybe this was another track that I didn't do anything with. But it's very possible this track was started in 2020. So 5 years, 4.5, because it started at the end of 2020. But yeah, we are finally here with, at this point, my oldest track. Now, the other thing I want to say about this track is, there's a lot of things I want to say about this track. But the other thing I want to say about this track is, this track it's one of the exceptions to one of my tracks, because I talk a lot about intention, and there's absolutely intention in this track. But this track is absolutely just raw and made by feel. That's one of the unique things about this track. And I think it has to do with the fact that it was made so long ago, which is one of the things I wanted to mention, is that two things. Number one, this track is really just made by feel. There were things about this track that, didn't really fit my type of producing and composition. But this was one of those rare tracks that I made that I just made entirely by feel. I thought, you know what? I like how this sounds. I like how this feels. I'm going to leave it and I'm not going to touch it. And what ended up happening is that, in combination with the fact that this is one of my oldest tracks, so I guess you could say I felt some sort of attachment to it, even though that's not really true, but I'm sure it's true in some ways. But those two things ended up kind of influencing the third aspect of this track, which is, this is a very, very raw track. This is a track that I did not want to touch. Now, when I finally realized I was going to release this track, it was probably earlier this year, and it was mostly done. I mean, this was pretty close to done. This is a very, very small track. That's the other thing. Yeah, track general overview. You have some patterns on the side, very few samples here, and we're looking at how many mixer tracks. 37 mixer tracks, which in this day and age is very, very little for me. At first, it would be, I'm pretty sure, I think Fake ID and Low ended up right around there. But in this day and age, that's very, very little. So this track is a very, very raw track. It's something that I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to kind of color it up and fill it in, even though that now I'm better at doing that. Something about this track, I just thought, you know what? The fact that this is a track that I made by feel, the fact that it's a long track, the fact that I made this track so long ago and it's kind of personal to me. It's not really personal to me, but I think part of it that's not one of the factors, but I think that helps kind of push this kind of idea, the theme of the track, the fact that it's so old. All that combined just kind of led me to make this track a much more raw track that I didn't really want to touch. I kept it very minimalistic, very simple. Of course, the emphasis is on the progression after that, but I just really, really didn't want to do anything to this track. So earlier this year when I decided I wanted to release it, and I think I'd probably had just finished up Understanding. I'm working on Slow. I'm working on one way or another. And then I look at this track, getting ready to see what I need to do to it. And I'm looking at it and I think, you know what? I don't want to do anything to it. I could do stuff to it, but I don't feel the need. I don't want to do anything to it. I kind of just want to leave it as it is. So I touched it very, very little, which is why you'll see right here, total time spent on it, 10 hours. Very, very fast. Not only do I think that's just fast in general, but for me, that's very, very fast. Right now, I'm kind of averaging around 20 hours, 25 sometimes. I think that the shortest track, probably Progress or Release or Call or one of those maybe ended up at 15 hours or maybe 16 or 17. But this was a very fast track. By the way, this is also including some of the things I was doing just now, and I was listening to it again, and I was prepping the project file and doing a few other things. But so this is like a 9-hour track, and that's very, very fast for me. So again, I just didn't want to touch the track. I just thought I want to leave it as it is, not only because I just didn't want to touch it for all the reasons, but in combination with that, what ended up happening is this ended up being a very raw track, and I wanted it to be a raw track, which is why the cover art is just a picture outside, right? It's not really graphically edited. It's not something super, almost futuristic or sci-fi or otherworldly like I like to do in some of my other albums. You take a look at Progress or Exposition or pretty much everything, something really with a lot of design to it. Call had a lot of design to it, but some of these other ones were settings, right? Exposition and Progress and Expression, the Expression EP definitely, and things like that. But this is just a picture of the road outside. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second. But again, this track just ended up being super raw, and I wanted it to be super raw, and just kind of take it for what it is instead of making it super, super touched up. And that's exactly what I ended up doing with this track. So why did I make this track, and why did I name it Night? I honestly couldn't tell you why I made this track. I can't even tell you what I started with. I am very, very confident I started with these vocal chops and everything else went from there. Maybe the kick was in place, but I'm very confident that the kick and the vocal chops were there. And again, when I was producing this track, I just went by feel here. So why did I make this track? It just kind of happened because I was producing by feel. I started with this vocal. I probably added the kick. I'm pretty sure I added this kick really early. And I just made a track that, had just long progression and played around with these vocals for a long time. So what did I start with? I started probably with this. I was going to say I probably need to change the effects a little bit. What bus are we in? Right here. All right, so let's take everything off. I started with this. And in case you guys don't know, and I'm sure in another track breakdown I've mentioned this, or if I haven't mentioned it, if you haven't picked up on it, I use this vocal in a lot of places. I use this vocal a lot in a lot of tracks. It's pretty much one of the first ones I had, and it's also one of the first ones I reach to whenever I want to add something, and I'll touch it up. I'll do a bunch of random things. I'm pretty sure this is in Exposition. Hold that thought. These two vocals right here that you see, Vocal D and Vocal C, are some of my go-to vocals that I just use everywhere. And D, I think Vocal D I use a little bit more often. I work a lot in D major and actually C major and C minor. Those are kind of my three favorite keys that I work in all the time. But I'm pretty sure I use that D major vocal in Exposition. If you see the breakdown, you'll see it. If you saw one of my shorts where I talked about, now I'm rambling again. If you saw one of my shorts where I talked about, doing things outside of your comfort zone, I'm pretty sure this is the vocal I use. But I mean, there's all other sorts of tracks I used it. I used it in slow. I just used it in slow, unless I use the C. I think I might have used the C vocal in slow, but I've used this a lot of times. So I'm pretty sure this track started with this vocal. And then I probably just, repeated it, chopped it up, and, went from there to give us something that sounds like this. Now let's just go here. Pitched it up, I guess, but actually we're pitched up, and then we pitched the actual vocal sample down. No clue what key we're in. I think we're in E. Yeah, we're in E here. But that's what we start with. And I'm pretty sure I made this pretty early as well, which we'll get to later in the track. But the whole track ended up just being kind of with a kick. the whole track just kind of ended up starting on the foundation of the kick and the vocal and just building it up from there. So that's why I made this track, and it ended up being kind of a more housey type feeling track that you kind of that I just really made by feel. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, speaking of making this track by feel, I've always talked about how, you know, sometimes when I make a track, you have a certain vision in mind. Mentioned that in Release. Kind of a few of the Expression tracks had that in mind for sure. Twilight definitely had that in mind, and a few other ones did as well. But this track also had a vision in mind. This is a night drive track. This is absolutely a track made for when you're driving at night. I've actually been really getting into melodic house driving at night, and it's interesting that I made this track so long ago, and it kind of took on a melodic house type feeling. But this is definitely a track that when I was making this, I thought this is my night driving track. The actual project file of this name is house_night. That's what it was. It was a house track, but I made it for the nighttime, which is why I named it house_night. And to push that further along, why did I name this track Night? For two reasons. Number one, that kind of pushes exactly what I'm trying to do, which is a nighttime track. But B, just the simple short name Night also kind of delivers that feeling of it being a raw track where it's not really touched up. It's not meant to be something extravagant, but it's just raw. It delivers it straight to you, night. That's what this track is. This track is about one thing. It's about night, specifically driving at night. But again, that one word title with something so simple, with a basic picture that's untouched. I mean, I'm sure that I'm sure the picture is actually touched by whoever took the picture. But, you know, it's just a picture of outside, not unlike my usual pictures, which are, I mean, just something a little bit more, more of a graphic, something a little bit more creative. This is just straight up a picture of the outside. You get the greens in there, you get the dark blues, you see the paved road, the yellow line that I really like. And again, everything just combined just delivers a feeling of a raw track, which I really, really like. Okay, but that's enough about that, because I think we can actually get into the breakdown now. How are we doing on time? Pretty bad. Yeah, it's probably going to be a long track, but we'll see. We'll see how long this breakdown takes, because it's a very, very simple track. Now, that being said, I mentioned, here we go. All right, let's start with the intro first before I get carried away with what I'm about to say, because what does the intro sound like? You hit play on the track and you get this. You just get a kick. You get nothing else. Now, here's the hard part. I said last video, and I think I said the video before. I mentioned it in my intent. That's not the point. The point is this. Intention, people. I've talked a lot about intention. I mentioned last video how I can dedicate an entire video talking about certain things. And in one of the videos that I scrapped, I talked about how I could spend, minutes talking about something so simple as in, why did I make this intro just to kick? Right? Because you might think, all right, let's just make the kick the intro, but no, this is very, very intentional, and I'm not making this up. So that being said, I've unofficially said that I could make an entire video talking about why I made this intro just to kick. I could talk for 10 minutes on why I made the intentional decision to have just a kick as the intro. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, that being said, that's not going to be this video, because again, if you saw the last one, I talked about how I'm going to make more videos talking about things. Now I'm just repeating myself, and I'm after editing my videos more, I realized I should stop repeating myself that much, but that's not going to stop. That's just who I am. The point is this. I'm going to make a whole video talking about this intro, because again, I could make a whole video talking about why that's just a kick. It's actually more important than you might think about just making hey, let's just start with a kick. I can make a whole video talking about this, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I'll give you guys the quick 30-second kind of recap on why I made this intro just a kick. So you start with the track, you hit play, and there's just a kick playing. Why is the intro just a kick? This is a 7-minute track. And this track is all about feeling and just becoming one with the track and being immersed in the track. This is not one of those tracks that you can play, that you can fast forward, that you can kind of just casually listen to, even though it's meant to be listened to when you're driving at night. There's still a lot of progression there. It's still meant to kind of really be immersed in it. So the reasoning here is this. If you start a track with just the kick, there's more to it, but the reasoning is this. If you start a track with just the kick, it already kind of gets you in the kind of the zone of, okay, we're not going for the extremes here where we're listening for big change. We're not ready to listen to a track that is going to be super, super detailed and super, super complex in its effects and everything. The idea here is that if you listen to this track and you listen to this and you already don't like what you're listening to and you fast forward to it, you're not going to like the track. As pretty much as simple as that. But if you listen to this track, you already come in with an open mind, and you hear the kick and you already start to establish kind of the kick pattern in your head and start to imagine what you're going to get and start to imagine, okay, this is a long track that we're going to get kind of in a progressive type kind of blocks, really defined phrases, then you're going to enjoy the track. So long story short, the point is this. Starting with just the kick, it kind of filters out the listener. Again, this is a very simplified way of simplified thing, and I'm going to make a whole video on it. But and this is something I've actually done a lot. I did it in intro. I did it in the intro of the EP. I think I'm kind of doing it in my next track, and I kind of did it in a few other tracks. Maybe kind of progress, kind of journey beyond. But the point is this: this kind of filters out the listener. If you're not willing to sit through 8 bars. 8 bars of just a kick and already kind of immerse yourself and get in the zone and get ready to experience the progression of this track, a progressive type track, then you're not going to like the track, and that's okay. All right, if you're not ready to just listen to this kick for a bit and you're thinking, all right, I want some more, I want to fast forward and I want to actually get to the exciting part of the track, well, then you're going to find this track is not for you in the first place, so there's no need for you to listen to it, kind of. So that's why I started this track with just the kick. So just the kick, we're already there. We're defining the rhythm. You establish the kick. And what I'm going to talk about in the next video is it also establishes kind of a pattern and the patterning of the track because if you get the kick for just 8 bars, it already establishes kind of this 8-bar pattern in your head where you already start to imagine the track in 8 bars. Because it's just the kick and the clap here, before anything major happens, you kind of define a 16-bar loop, which was my intention here. So that's what we're doing here. We're starting slow. We're introducing elements slowly. We're starting stripped down so that the listeners who are willing to sit through this and already imagine and immerse and define in their head are the ones I want to listen to this track. The other ones, hey, you're probably not going to enjoy the track anyways, so you can go to the next track if you want. But here is where we get to it after 16 bars into the actual track where we go by feel. The kick, clap, hi-hat loop that was not there to start. Real quick, the original track idea back when I was deciding to actually finish it had these drums, but not the hi-hat loop. It had this hi-hat over here. This vocal chant was here. The pads were here. Some of this extra stuff wasn't here. This bass layer wasn't here, and this wasn't here. But everything else, the point I'm trying to make is 80% of the stuff was already here. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and when I decided to finish this track, I added very few things. So again, I wanted to keep it stripped. I wanted to keep it very minimalistic and keep it raw. Is the word I think kind of perfectly describes this track, which is also why it's meant to be light on the compression. I had to compress it more than I wanted to, but it's pretty light on the compression and the effects and things like that. Because we start with the track. Let's break down all the elements because we don't have that many here. Obviously, you're hearing the drums right here. Kind of like these drums. You get the vocal effects right here. Pretty simple melody right here. And you get this main synth, I should say. Next up, you have the bass guitar. Another thing I really like about this track, again, keeping with the raw feel of it, is the bass guitar is another one of the tracks that I've played with, that I played myself. I think we're up to number 3 now, which should be slow and progress. I feel like I'm missing one, but I don't think so. This is track number 3 with bass guitar. I might play it. I know in the past I've said it sounds awful, but I had to compress it quite a bit and EQ it quite a bit. I didn't want to, but I did. So I might play it. Let's see what this sounds like. Yeah, not the best, but not the worst with all this compression and the side chain especially. Kind of swells up right here. Ideally, I didn't want to compress this that much, but I ended up having to compress it a little bit more than I wanted to. We get a bass layer, which again I added kind of last minute because I just needed to balance out the bass guitar a little bit. But it's very light. You can hardly hear it. And finally, at the end, I added this. I'll turn this up in post. But, I mean, what more could you ask for? This is the raw track, as raw as it gets right here. So yeah, you get this in the track, all leading to the perfect summer night track. I'm not going to use the word perfect, but a great track for driving at night in the summer. And that is night. So probably not much more I'm going to go over here. A few things, starting with kind of, we're going to be looking at this in kind of in phrases for the first part, and in bars, I should say, instead of in time, because we get the intro. 16 bars later, we are at kind of the next phrase. We're just establishing. We get the feeling, we get the bass, we get the effects, we get all this sorts of stuff. We get the synths, and we move forward 32 bars later to just a little bit more of a filtered part. Filter out the drums. Vocal does not get filtered out. A little bit of effect right here. Again, nice swell on the right side. A lot of swell, a lot of things that swell here. Again, raw track. Nice effects over here that add a pretty good ambience to it. Again, it's all we're really looking at. It's just effects here and there, but other than that, pretty raw track. After the filter, we're now 8 bars later. Hats come back in, a little bit of piano going on, a little bit of softer pads, piano chords sounding like this. Very nice, almost organ type. This might even be like an E piano. Yeah, I was gonna say it's a Rhodes. A little bit of an ARP. I actually wasn't a fan of this when I first added it, and I'm still not, but again, this is one of those things that I just grew attached to, and I just can't take it away now. So I grew on me. Same thing over here, and a slightly softer pad. Again, just a little bit more kind of a you know, emotion, a little bit more of a feel to it. Where were we? Hi-hats come back. We'll probably do a brief overview of the progression at the end, but this definitely does not have some of the most progression out of the tracks I've made. But after that, we get high pass, which kind of is your sign that we're moving on. 8 bars later, now we can probably go to time. So 8 bars later, we're in the high pass area. Now we're kind of reestablishing the 16 bar loop because we're with the high pass stays for the next part. No build up here, but we strip it down a little bit more until we get over here. No more high pass, just the kick. Again, kick, chords, and vocal are all you're listening to there. We changed it a little bit by actually introducing a 4-bar change, just for a little bit of extra variety. And then the hi-hats come back, one early, one offbeat early, and then we're going again. Same pattern again. So this is one of the things about this track is that I really just did it by feel here. Normally, I would not have a track that progresses like this. I kind of broke one of my cardinal sins, which is having 2 areas of the track that sound exactly the same. Now, I don't like doing that already, but I have said that if you get there differently through different means, in a different way, it works. And that's the only reason I was able to get away with it in this track is because I got to these places in a different way, which I'll probably, again, give a quick overview at the end, and then maybe dedicate another whole video talking about what that means in this track specifically. But again, we kind of get areas where we already heard stuff more than once. But, you know, we're going by A, we're getting there in a different way. And B, I didn't care because we're going by feel here. We're only going by feel here. And that's why we got a track that sounds like this. So the example I'm giving here is right here. The drop has this pattern, but we also have the exact same pattern over here. So we're not really doing many new things. But that's why it's slightly a progressive track, because we're just kind of moving forward in a bunch of different ways, getting to places in different ways, but that doesn't matter because we're only going by feel here. I do kind of like this area where I just drop the drums and drop the bass real quick. I don't know why I like that switch up. But again, we get a few more elements here just to fill things out a little bit more. A few more 16 bar loops that we're just kind of enjoying for a second. Going by feel here, you're driving at night, and then we change it up. Most importantly with this hi-hat, I really like this hi-hat loop actually. It also feels a little bit more raw, and it has quite a lot of groove to it, which I can just hear. And you're just getting a few more pads now that we are going to break down, as I said, because there's very few elements here. Area chain pad. Oh, that's quite nice. Chords victory. Mandatory. This sounds pretty powerful, but it kind of is very soft in the context of the track. But introduces just enough things that it feels slightly new. And that's all we're doing here. Again, we get the bass guitar this entire time. One of the things I should have mentioned here is, despite my horrible bass guitar playing, let's take a listen to this, where I did switch it up a little bit, where we get eighth notes over here, but we just get some sustains. Then some triplets. Actually, I don't think these are triplets. They're kind of. Whatever the term is. And right here. And then after that, we just get the straight eighth notes for the entire time. But I did mess around with it a little bit. Anyways, I believe we left off over here. And after this, another loop here, which is actually, what, another 16-bar loop? Let's see, 97 to, yep, another 16-bar loop. We bring it down. Now we're low passing. Let's cut it back a little bit more. After that, we bring it down. Now we low pass the kick. The vocals are gone, actually. Now we're really just enjoying the synth. Plus this extra kind of droney pad that you should be hearing a little bit more out of the right. And the bass. The bass should be filtered too, actually, but I'm not going to bother checking. It might not be. I don't see any EQs here. So bass is not filtered. Okay, I did bother checking. Yep, not filtered, at least not as far as I can tell. But the point is, sidechain actually gets taken off. You can see I mess around with the sidechain quite a bit on the bass guitar, but it's not big enough for you to notice. But again, we strip things back, which is why it feels a little bit more progressive. Strip it back, low pass on the clap as well. Really just by feel here. It's a very hard, not harsh, but it's a very rough low pass, as in I just turned it on and I automated the mix level. But again, just by feel, we kind of we turn those off and we go back up to pretty much the same thing we heard earlier. But again, going by feel here. Nice hi-hats, nice everything. We can move forward pretty quickly. We'll hear this out because I do like this change you get right here. Probably the biggest change, which is why it does feel a little bit more like a progressive track as well. Because after you just endured 4 minutes and 30 seconds of this, through, again, just a track that you already committed to by listening to the intro, you finally get some nice change that makes it feel a little bit more progressive. Which is just you make some chords out of that vocal sample. You low pass that kick again, and now with a kick low pass, but instead with the vocals back in with more harmonies, it becomes very nice, very heavenly too. Nice effect over here that I really like. I brought it up so you can really let it, really hear it, and really kind of has an impact. And this is another area where I really just like the feeling. Unfiltered kick, things are going over here. Sorry, the synths are getting unfiltered, kick was getting unfiltered. And now we get slightly higher harmony. Sorry, I got distracted. We got I was looking at this, but yeah, synth gets unfiltered. Slightly more harmonies here to really bring you up a little bit more. We switch around with it, we play around with inversions here actually, which does kind of push it forward a little bit more. Looks like synths go away, droney comes back. Again, here we do something. I don't know what we're doing here. I do need to check this. What is this? Okay, yeah, because here the EQ is on. Yeah, here we high pass the guitar. I was gonna say there's definitely something on here. We low pass the guitar actually. And then the low pass goes away. And then we get those harmonies again. Inversions on the chords of the vocal chop, I should say. You hear that guitar a little bit more because it's becoming more and more stripped. It's becoming a little bit more and more raw. And then drop things down slightly just to deliver the last drop. This time everything's in full force. We get a light sustain here apparently as well. Super light super saws. Other than that, everything else is there. The chords victory is there, the pad is there, the softer pad, the drone, the arp, the piano, the main synth. Again, these are all super soft and we have to change the buffer size. But we get everything in full force. Again, these are all soft, so it's a lot of layers, but they each just add slight subtleties, and they're all pretty soft, so they don't really overwhelm each other. Well, we're still dealing with buffer issues, but that's all right. Yeah, I had a feeling they would go away. We keep the track moving forward. Same string effect, same effect over here. Yeah, my computer doesn't like something about this. And then we bring the inversions back to kind of bring the track to an end. But other than that, you're still just enjoying everything. All these hi-hats, this hi-hat I forgot to break down as well. Because you got this one, you got this one, and this one. So 2 hi-hats, one left, one right. This tambourine, this hi-hat loop a little bit more centered. But that's what you're working with. So yeah, we do get this hi-hat loop over here that I forgot to mention, and we keep it near the end. But again, we were at the inversions over here. Come on. And then we drop most of these elements right here. As the chords, as the vocal chop harmonies come back up, as everything comes to an end, and just the kick. Everything's gone. We really enjoy the drums with this this main synth that I really like. Bass guitar is still there, bass layer is still there, but the drums are about to go away soon enough to bring us to the end. And you just get to enjoy those one last time. Few filters here to make it a little bit more of a softer finish. Bass guitar's there. And then we really drag out this last chord. And that is Night. It's actually interesting because it seems like a pretty fast breakdown. I don't know how I'm doing on time right now, but I don't really stop at all to ramble because I'm just going by feel here, like I said, so there's not really much to break down. And B, there's still intention in this track, but the intention is the feeling, so I'm not going to break down too much. The intro is the biggest thing. You know, things like adding these hi-hats that I really like and balancing things out are something that aren't really too intricate, so there's intention behind all this stuff, and you know, the nice storytelling ability of, after this drop, bringing it back down with a low-pass kick, because we do have another, 3.5 minutes to this track, so bringing it down with the low pass, right here, getting back to that home base that term I use a lot, but that's really what it is. Getting back to that home base before we low pass it again, but with higher harmonies, with more harmonies on the vocal chops, I should say. All that storytelling is still there, but again, it's really just going by feel here. So again, I might make a whole video about this progression. Now that being said, I did want to take 30 seconds to talk about the progression here because again, I'm going to make a whole video on this. I haven't decided yet, but I do want to quickly talk about the progression. I'm going to see if I can keep this under 2 minutes because I know I can get carried away. So, starting now. I've said in the past that you don't really want to have the same exact parts of a track more than once. Although the exception to that rule is if you get there in a different way. If you have one part of a track that sounds a certain way, and then you do something different, and then you go back to the same part, but you got there a different way, that counts as progression, which is really what we're doing here. We have the intro, and this is kind of our home base. This is our standard kind of, our standard pattern of the track. So we play around with it. We start with just the kick, we add the clap, we establish the bass, the home bass, the standard pattern, and we play around. We really let you get immersed into that vocal, into the synths with this low pass. We go back here, although with a few more elements, so it's not exactly the same. And then we build up to the drop and go straight to it. And even though you kind of have similar things, just getting this progression here makes it feel a little bit more distinct. Plus you build it up quite a bit. So not only do you go back to this home base, but you start adding all the other stuff. You get some effects right here. You get some more effects right there. Sorry, that's kind of a chop right there, I should say. And then you build it up even more to kind of a climax. So earlier when you had the home base right here, you went up, down, back up, back down, back up, and then up again to an even higher point. And then you bring the track back down with that low pass. This time low pass kick and clap to really let you kind of soak it in, to really relax for a second until we get back to that home base. To which we strip things back, preparing for a new climax. Because now, look at that. We introduce some harmonies to the vocal chops with the kick low pass to really let you hear that. things come back in slowly, and now we really play around with those harmonies and this by adding even more, and you know, preparing you for a new climax, which is why we strip things back a little bit. You know, this main synth goes away. We do, we get these inversions as well. We bring the drops back for another second. Sorry, we take the drums back. We take them away for another second. And then we deliver that new climax with everything you heard before, but with a new layer and the new harmonies. So it's just a wave of going up and down and up and down, and that's really where the progression of this track comes from. So again, I might make a whole video on it because I think it'll be worth breaking down. But that's how we keep this progression in the track, even though a lot of it sounds the same. Up and down, waves, playing with energy, taking things away, bringing them back, and introducing new climaxes and new peaks of the track. Which, after all that, we get the inversions again to get kind of a new climax, the final climax there. Introduces a little bit of a nuance and some nice feel to it, some nice tension. And then we're down. Vocal chops go away and we relax. We enjoy the soothing synths one more time. Drums go away and we're left with just that soothing synth for the last time 7 minutes later. And that is night. All right, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm really glad I went over that. That's the intention I talk about. There's intention behind all of these things that are sometimes just inexplicable. They're ineffable. They're hard for me to explain and grasp and put into words. But things like that and playing with these ups and downs, and even though we have this home base, bringing it down and then back up, but then back down, and you know, pushing for a new climax, then bringing it back down and bringing it back up in waves to get a new climax. These are all the things, this is all the intention that goes into a track that sometimes I just find it hard to explain and sometimes you just can't explain. But these are the type of things I consider. So again, even though I didn't do much talking during the actual breakdown, that's the real intention behind this track. That's the real progression behind this track, which I think is awesome. So you guys can let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out this track if you haven't already. 7-minute track, perfect. I released this track in the summer intentionally. I actually released it on the summer solstice, June solstice, I should say. So it was perfect because, you know, it's one of my favorite times of year when the sun is going down super late. I'm in the eastern U.S. for those who don't know. Kind of northeastern U.S., you could say, at Washington, D.C. area. So we kind of get those, you know, at this time of year, we're getting those 8:45 p.m. sunsets, which I just love. So perfect track for driving the night. Check it out on Spotify, out on all platforms, of course. Let me know what you thought about this track. Let me know if you liked it. Let me know if you disliked it. Let me know if you heard the first few seconds and you're like, I'm not listening to this. This is boring. Let me know if you listened to the whole track. Let me know if you like it or don't like it. Let me know if it's too long, if it's too short. Probably not too short. Let me know what you think about the progression. Let me know if you agree with the feeling, if you think that it's raw. Let me know if, hey, you know what, maybe probably could have touched it up a little bit more. Or let me know what you think about the track in general. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you're a content creator, check out my Pond 5 store to get some instrumentals for the background music of your videos or any other purposes you may need. And stay tuned because we got more videos coming. Next track will be out. I don't know when because, well, I'm not going to say too much because I got something, I'm working on something. But next track will be out. Plan is to be in August. We got a mix coming out. The mix I can't announce. Actually, I have a summer day drive mix coming out on July 18th. I don't know how much I've talked about alternative music here, alternative rock, you know, things like Empire of the Sun and Two Door Cinema Club. But those are the genres that actually got me into music. And I have a summer drive mix with some of the most popular alternative songs in it. So that's going to be coming out July 18th, if I messed that up. July 18th. So stay posted for that. That's the next thing I'm working on. Summer drive mix coming out, then a few more tracks coming out later. But other than that, that is all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.